She is barefoot when they lead her into the atrium. The marble is cold beneath her heels. 7 people stand in a half-circle behind her, watching in silence, their faces blank as temple masks. In front of her, draped in dark linen, something waits in the corner, something wooden, anchored to the floor, its shape unmistakable even beneath the cloth. She was promised yellow flowers, music in the street, handfuls of walnuts thrown by laughing children. Instead, she stands here in this shuttered house, her hands trembling so hard she has to press them flat against her thighs. If she refuses what is about to happen, the contract her father signed this morning will mean nothing. Her future will collapse before it begins. Before we go any deeper, I want to know, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city in the comments. It still amazes me that a story this buried, this uncomfortable, can reach across centuries and oceans to find you. The girl's name is Flavia Tertia. She is 18 years old. It is the year 89 CE, in the reign of Emperor Domitian. She is the daughter of a respectable equestrian family, not nobility, but close enough to matter. A few hours ago she walked through the streets of Rome in a saffron veil while strangers pelted her with nuts and sang obscene songs about what her husband would do to her tonight. Her father called it tradition. The crowd called it blessing. No one called it what it actually was, a public transfer of ownership. The document signed that afternoon moved her from her father's legal authority to her husband's. Patri potestas shifted like the deed to a warehouse or a tract of farmland. And like any transfer of valuable property in Rome, this one required verification, proof, witnesses who could swear in court that the transaction had been completed. Tonight we are going inside that locked room. We are going to look at the god whose name almost no Roman writer dared to speak. We are going to see how Roman law turned a wedding night into a supervised inspection, with a priest, a midwife, a physician, and 7 witnesses checking a girl's body the way customs agents check imported grain. Then we will trace the centuries-long cover-up, how Christian leaders smashed the statues, burned the records, and rewrote the story of Rome so thoroughly that most of us never knew this happened at all. Stay with me, because by the end of this you will never hear the word civilization the same way again. Outside, the street noise fades into nothing. Inside, the air is thick with lamp smoke and myrrh oil. Flavia's veil has been lifted. Her hair, braided this morning with such care, is already coming loose from the heat and the weight of her fear. She sees them all at once. An elderly woman in formal stola, a man in priestly robes, 3 slave women holding folded linen and bronze basins, a man with a leather case at his feet, his hands clean, his expression clinical, and in the corner, covered in that dark cloth, the thing that does not belong to ordinary furniture. The older woman steps forward. Her name is not recorded. In theory, she is there to comfort the bride. In practice, she is there to manage her body, her fear, her compliance. She takes Flavia by both hands. The grip is firm, not gentle, the kind of hold you use on an animal that might bolt. You are in your husband's house now, she says quietly. The public rites are finished. Here, we complete what the gods and the law demand. Flavia's husband, Marcus Petronius Rufus, stands a few paces away. He is 25 years older than she is. He has spoken to her exactly 3 times before this day, twice, in the presence of both families, once during the contract negotiations. She listened while men discussed her dowry. the property she brought, the alliances it secured. No one asked if she wanted this. In Roman thinking, that was not the point. Consent was a formality when the families had already agreed. To understand what is really happening in this lamp-lit room, you have to strip away the modern idea of marriage as romance. In Rome, a high-status wedding was above all a legal event. Jurists described it as a woman coming into the hand of a new man, after the husband held that power, or at least shared it. Earlier in Roman history, this power had been almost absolute. A husband could, in theory, punish his wife as he did his slaves. By Flavia's time, the rules had softened in practice, but the structure remained. A woman did not stand in law as an independent person. She existed inside the power of a man. When land changed hands in Rome, the process was meticulous. Witnesses were summoned, the plot was walked. Boundaries were pointed out. Tablets recorded the transfer. Everyone involved left knowing exactly what had been exchanged. No one would trust a land sale that took place in secret, with no witnesses, no proof. The same logic was applied to marriage. But now the property at stake was not a field or a house. It was a woman's capacity to produce legitimate children. An unconsummated union could be treated as incomplete, open to challenge. They preferred systems where someone could testify that the crucial acts had occurred. That is why witnesses hovered around wedding nights, why a pronuba watched the bed, why physicians and midwives examined brides. To Roman minds, this was not cruelty. It was legal security. They were making sure that status, inheritance, and family lines could stand up in court. Virginity in this system was a kind of guarantee label. A man needed to be sure that any children born in the marriage could be claimed as his. If there was doubt about the bride's past, there could later be doubt about the heirs. So the bride's body had to be checked before marriage, and then checked again afterward. If that sounds invasive, it is because it was. Roman medical texts spoke of methods for confirming a girl's untouched state, as if describing how to test the quality of wine or grain. The fact that a living person was involved did not change the tone. The pronuba does not explain any of this. She does not need to. Everyone in that room knows the rules. Instead, she turns Flavia toward the covered object in the corner. "Before your husband comes to you," she says, "you must greet the god. You must ask his favor. You must show that you accept the duty of a wife." Her fingers tighten around Flavia's arm as they walk toward the draped figure. The slave women watch from the wall, eyes lowered but alert. The priest murmurs a short invocation. The man with the leather case says nothing at all. Up close, the shape under the cloth is unmistakable. It is not a chair, not a table, not an altar. It rises from a heavy base and narrows upward. Flavia's breath shortens. "Uncover him," the older woman orders quietly. "You must see him before he sees you." Flavia's hands, still trembling, reach for the cloth. She pulls it back. What stands beneath is a carved wooden form, polished from use. Its meaning is obvious. It is the sex of a man rendered on a scale too large to dismiss as a joke. This is not the small, lucky charm boys wore on strings. This is not the crude sign on a tavern wall. It has been made carefully with attention to detail, and anchored so it cannot shift. The room seems to tilt. Flavia almost reaches to cover it again, but the pronuba holds her in place. This is mutinous Tertunus, the older woman says in a tone that is both respectful and tense. He protects the fruitfulness of marriages. Before a husband enters you, he does. That name, mutinus tutunus, hardly appears in surviving Roman writing except in embarrassed whispers. A few authors mention a household god linked with marriage and with sexual beginnings. A learned antiquarian notes that brides were given to him. Later, Christian writers describe the custom in harsher language, calling it filthy, outrageous, proof of pagan corruption. Their anger and their lack of detail make sense once you realize what they were hinting at. Some modern scholars have tried to soften the story. They imagine a bride merely sitting on the god's lap, a symbolic touch, nothing more. But the words used by ancient critics do not fit that picture. They speak of brides mounting the image of actions too shameful to spell out. One church writer simply refuses to describe what the bride did, saying that even repeating the old ritual would stain the tongue. That is a strange reaction if all she did was briefly perch on a statue. It fits much better if the act was understood as a kind of first penetration performed as a sacred test, witnessed and remembered. The stated purpose was religious. The god would bless the womb, remove fear, open the way for lawful children. The hidden purpose was psychological and legal. The bride was being forced to submit in front of others before the wedding night even began. Any resistance was broken early, under the excuse of religion. By the time she reached the marriage bed, she had already been handled, positioned, examined. The law liked this. It meant there would be witnesses who could swear that she had done her duty, that nothing had been hidden, that she had accepted the role expected of her. The Pronuba begins to instruct Flavia in a voice just loud enough for everyone to hear. She tells her how to stand, how to bend, what words to say. The phrases are old, passed down through generations, calling on the god to take away shame and grant children. To Flavia, the words feel like something recited by someone else. Her mind snags on a different voice, her mother's, whispering that morning while arranging the braids. Do not fight them. Whatever they ask, do not struggle. It will only bring more harm. The room has gone very quiet. Even the lamps seem to crackle less. Marcus keeps his eyes on the statue, not on his bride. The priest watches without expression. The physician's gaze is clinical, already measuring what he will later inspect from closer range. The slave women stare at the floor. Only the Pronuba meets Flavia's eyes, and in that look there is something like resignation, as if she too remembers standing where Flavia now stands. Flavia understands the stakes with painful clarity. If she refuses now, someone will have to step forward and stop the ceremony. The contracts her father signed could be challenged. The dowry might be at risk. Word would spread that she had turned away from a god of marriage. Another match would be difficult or impossible. Her parents would be shamed. Brothers and cousins might blame her for years. All the weight of family honor rests on what she does in the next moments. She has been raised to bear that weight without question. She does not refuse. She follows the instructions given to her. The god whose name she had never spoken before this night becomes the first body she is required to accept. The act is sacred, they tell her. It is for her own good. It is tradition, the same word that has covered so many things in her short life. When it is done, the Pronuba murmurs a brief prayer of thanks, as if they had completed a normal blessing. The cloth is thrown back over the wooden figure, hiding it once more in shadow. At once the slaves step forward with metal basins and linen cloths. The water is lightly perfumed. To any outsider, the washing might look like simple care after a long day. In truth, it is another ritual. They are purifying the bride after contact with the god. They are also preparing her for the next inspection. The pronuba oversees the washing closely, checking that no marks, no traces remain that could later be argued about. The bride has done what was required. The surface has been cleaned. Now the law wants proof. The man with the leather case moves for the first time. He is either a physician or an experienced midwife disguised in male dress for the sake of respectability. The sources are unclear, but the role is. His job is to examine Flavia. In wealthy households, especially when the dowry was large, no one left virginity to trust. Before the wedding day, someone like him had already checked her body and recorded his findings. Now he will look again. What he sees and what he writes will become part of the household's private file on its new member. A human being reduced to a set of observations about flesh and blood. Flavia sees him open the case. She sees glints of metal, twisted shapes of tools designed for probing and spreading. Her heart begins to pound again, harder than before. The pronuba's hand returns to her arm. The priest murmurs another short prayer. Marcus shifts his weight, uneasy but silent. The door to the bedchamber beyond stands open. The marriage bed already made, its covers folded back. She realizes with a sudden cold certainty that what had just happened with the wooden god had only been the beginning. The real inspection is still ahead. The physician steps closer. "We will make this quick," he says not unkindly, but with the blank tone of someone who has done this many times and no longer wonders what it feels like. The witnesses lean in just enough to see that the examination has truly begun. Whatever is about to happen to Flavia's body will not be private. It will be observed, measured, and if necessary, sworn to. Rome's law demands nothing less. The examination does not begin with shouting or threats. It begins with orders given in a calm voice. That is part of what makes it so disturbing. The physician asks the slaves to hold the lamps higher. He tells Flavia to stand, then to lie back on a low couch brought in from the side of the room. The pronuba helps her out of the last layers of ceremonial clothing, not roughly, but with a brisk efficiency that leaves no space for hesitation. Roman writers later described this kind of procedure in dry, exact terms. They talked about signs and symptoms, about the shape and tightness of tissue, about how much blood appeared afterward. They debated which methods were most reliable for confirming that a girl was untouched. None of those texts mentioned tears, shaking hands, or the way a person looks for a friendly face in the room and finds only people doing their jobs. Those details never mattered to the men who wrote the manuals. The physician positions himself at the foot of the couch. The pronuba stays near Flavia's head, one hand resting on her shoulder. It is meant to steady her, but it also keeps her in place. The priest remains in the background, speaking short appeals to the gods for a fruitful union. The slaves shift when ordered, fetch cloths when asked, move the lamp when the doctor complains of shadows. Everyone behaves as if this is normal. For them, it is. What he looks for is clear enough. Before the wedding, he would have noted the presence of a physical barrier, the tightness of the opening, the girl's reaction to pressure. Now, after the encounter with the wooden god, he checks what has changed. Did the signs match what he expected? Was there damage that suggested earlier experience? Did the bleeding and soreness line up with what he knew from hundreds of similar cases? He is not asking whether Flavia is afraid or in pain. He is asking whether the property his client has acquired matches the description given. At certain moments he dictates short phrases to a slave who can write. That slave kneels in the corner with a wax tablet, scratching down notes that will later be copied onto more permanent materials. Signs consistent with prior intact state. Fresh rupture observed. Bleeding in expected measure. Clinical sentences stripped of emotion that will follow Flavia through her married life. If there is ever a dispute about her children, if another man claims them, or if Marcus tries to disown them, these notes could be summoned as evidence. For the Romans, this was the point. A marriage like this one linked families, property, and status. It created legal heirs who might inherit land, slaves, and political influence. No one wanted that structure resting on fragile private memories. They wanted proof. They wanted witnesses whose social standing gave weight to their words. They wanted a doctor who could say, "I examined her before and after. I saw the change. No one else touched her." That was the security the law demanded. When he finishes, the physician steps back and gives a curt nod. "She is as she should be," he says. The pronuba relaxes slightly. Marcus lets out a breath he probably had not realized he was holding. The priest raises both hands and declares that the gods are satisfied, that the final duty lies with the husband now.